let's talk about you were on the show alone twice. It's different than Naked and Afraid because it just doesn't end. It just keeps going.
We got chosen to go, and we had an amazing experience. So we lasted 49 days,
Wow.
so 7 weeks.
The Japanese say take forest baths, which is very healthy, right?
Yeah, I'm very interested. It's nature and forest therapy. I'm in the process of becoming a guide for that. It's called Shinrin Yoku. That is the Japanese term for forest bathing. It is the opening of all of your senses and slowing down, and the gift that the forest and nature can provide to you. I mean, it's just therapeutic.
You're always in the outdoors and you say, I'm going to start doing stuff on social and sharing my experiences. When did that start?
Well, I had a real deep desire to be a filmmaker. And so we were living in Alaska with our small children, and there's really no way to communicate what you're doing with family and friends. Other than video sounded like a great idea to me. Plus, it was just interesting to me. So I picked up my first camera in 2007 and just started, I went balls to the walls with it.
Brooke Whipple. All right. Excited. We're going to talk about alone, not being alone, like the show Alone. We're going to talk about outdoors. We're going to talk about how you got to do what you do. You got a nice little, following there, a situation, you got a group, you're a happy person. That's part of the catchphrase. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to, were you always an outdoor person? Tell us where you're from. Tell us a little about yourself.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Michael. Originally from Michigan. Yeah, I grew up steeped in the outdoors. My dad was a police officer, but he was also an outdoorsman. And just growing up in rural Michigan, you're really surrounded by hunting, fishing. It is really a culture here. In school, you get the first day of deer season off. It's a holiday. So there's those kind of things.
Oh.
And so, yeah, I really just grew up in that culture. And just a lifelong love of the outdoors. I just knew from a very, very young age that, the outdoors, mountains and the more wild, the better. And so Alaska was definitely on my radar. And, just after graduating high school, went to a local community college for a couple of years. And I couldn't shake this feeling that I just was not meant to be staying put in Michigan. So I got a job in Yellowstone National Park, and then that led to Vail, Colorado as a lift operator, and then Montana as a wildland firefighter, and then Alaska. And the adventures kept getting bigger and the mountains higher and, more wilderness. And it just became an obsession. I did end up returning back to college and have a degree in outdoor adventure recreation management, which really is just, gives me the license to say that I'm like some kind of professional outside. But I worked for the government. I worked at the Fort Greely, and that's an Army base in Delta Junction, Alaska, for a couple of years. I was the recreation director. So I would take soldiers and their families on adventures and create opportunities for them. I've worked for a lot of private resorts and teaching outdoor education and survival type skills to adults, as well as just going right into the schools and teaching that kind of stuff to kids, which is just a blast. And then just all kinds of personal adventures. So just couldn't get enough of the outdoor lifestyle, and just wanted to really just embrace that as much as possible and inspire other people to do the same thing.
Which you do. That's so esoteric. I would never think that the military was it that, but it actually a good de-stressor. The Japanese say take forest baths, which is very healthy, right? I forgot what there's a name for that. They name everything something. They have aphorisms for everything. But, was that the whole idea behind that?
And this was actually more recreation opportunities like skiing and quads and, snowshoeing or, fishing adventures with snow machines or quads and stuff like that. But on that same note, I'm very interested. It's nature and forest therapy. I'm in the process of becoming a guide for that. It's called Shinrin Yoku. That is the Japanese term for forest bathing. And it's a term that gets really misinterpreted because you just think, what are you doing? Do you take your clothes off? Are you getting in water? Like, what is going on? But really, it is the opening of all of your senses and slowing down, And the gift that the forest and nature can provide to you, I mean, it's just therapeutic. And we're not the guide. The forest is the guide, or the therapist. We're just the guide. The forest is the therapist. So we just provide that experience and let the forest do the work, because it is just like the most de-stressing, detoxifying, calming experience you can have. Of course, I've known this my whole life, but the Japanese figured it out after their society got more industrialized and more digitized, and they were seeing so many people super stressed. So they thought, let's create these spaces where people can go into the forest and de-stress and reconnect. And they found it lowered blood pressure, it reduced your stress, it helps you to sleep better. And those effects not only last for that moment, but they last for days and sometimes even weeks after. So it is super interesting that you brought that up. That's really coincidental.
How do you pronounce it? Shinrin Roku?
It's Shinrin Yoku.
How do you
Um,
Shinri?
it's at Shinrin
Uh-huh.
Yoku.
Yoku.
And they pronounce it a little differently
Yeah.
just because of
I
how
think it's
they,
cool how
yeah, but
they
yeah. So it's an entire sensual, you're opening all your senses, and it really is like a 2.5 hour immersion of just peacefulness. It's really great.
So how do you segue into what you do now? Because you got, you said you're always in the outdoors and say, I'm gonna start doing stuff on social and sharing my experiences. When did that start?
Well, I had a real deep desire to be a filmmaker. That was calling to me very early. And so we were living in Alaska with our small children, and there's really no way to communicate what you're doing with family and friends other than video. Sounded like a great idea to me. Plus, it was just interesting to me. So I picked up my first camera in 2007 and just started, like, I went balls to the walls with it. I said, I'm going to go just film everything that's interesting to me. And there's a race in Seward, Alaska called Mount Marathon. And Mount Marathon is the name of a mountain. It's 3,100 feet tall. And you race up and down it, and it starts and ends at the base of this tiny little town, right? So all you see of the race is the end and the beginning.
Wow.
I definitely thought this was incredible. I thought, I'm signing up for this race. So I did the race, and it was the people and the challenge of it is incredible. It's the third oldest foot race in America, but it goes straight up this mountain and straight down. Like, it's an insane race. And so I did this race, and I thought, I got to do a documentary on this. Like, nobody sees, all you're seeing is the ground level, right? As a spectator. So I met all kinds of interesting people that run the race, and just the history behind it. And just, it was so amazing. So I did this documentary, just shoestringing it. I didn't know what I was doing as a filmmaker yet, but I pulled it
Mhm.
off. And it was just a real growth moment of not only skills as a filmmaker, but just skills of just going for something that you want to do, both the race and the filming. And then I ended up filming as I ran the race. I had like
Wow.
a GoPro. I literally carried a camera
Wow.
and did like, and then I had two guys filming. Like, anyway, super proud of that. But that's where it started. And then YouTube, of course, is the place to share your your video adventures and inspiring things. So I started posting things on YouTube, and here we are 8 years later, and it's just become such a way for me to not only do what I love, but really, really the feedback that I get from people, that's what keeps me going. It's just like, you've inspired me to do this. I started camping again. I built my own cabin, like all these things. So it's just really, really super cool that way.
A couple things. One is you're from Michigan, and as you said, the steep mountain. There's a famous. I'm not familiar with. I just vaguely know, but there's a famous like hill or mountain in Michigan that is steep that goes down to a lake water, and you got to go up and down at your own peril. Do you know what I'm talking about? What this is?
Ah, boy, I can't think of it. I don't know. I know we have like a ski jump, like they used to have an Olympic like ski jump, those whoosh where they fly. and do that. And that's in the UP, but I can't think of, I
It
mean,
might
there's
not be in
pictured
Michigan.
rocks and,
It might be off of Lake Michigan, but
uh-huh.
it's basically only reason why I know I was on TikTok the other day and I just saw this like, thing about it. And it's just like steep, hilly mountain of like dirt that is just like
Oh,
goes
oh, I think I
forever.
know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the sand dunes that go down to Lake Michigan
Yeah.
at Sleeping Bear Dunes. And a
Yeah.
lot of people have to get rescued because it's so
Yes.
steep.
It costs
And
3 grand to rescue them or something
yes,
like that.
yeah,
So what's that
yeah.
called?
So that's at Sleeping Bear Dunes. And it's just a big, massive dune. I don't know, it's
Yeah.
maybe 600 feet down, but people
Yeah.
underestimate how hard it is to get back up.
Yeah.
And apparently, the search and rescue budget is funded from these people. They get like $300,000 a year from rescuing people who go down and cannot get back up.
Right. Yeah. It's
Yeah, yeah.
crazy looking too. So
Oh,
yeah,
it's so awesome. It's beautiful.
I had to mention that because you're from Michigan. Is it in Michigan?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's on the West Coast on Lake Michigan. So it
Wow.
goes right down to the big lake, and it's just like it's so beautiful. But people just you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, you're piling down,
Right.
it's really steep, and then you're like, crap, I gotta go back up. If you're not in shape and it's a hot day, you're in trouble.
Right. Right. It's so weird. Okay. So I digressed. I just had to know about that because,
Yes, yes, that's out there. I've seen that too.
okay. So, well, it's in your nature. You like going up and down. Did you ever go down that hill, that mountain, by the way?
I've been down several of those, but I have not been to that spot. I
We
know what
need,
you're talking about though.
well,
Yeah. I'll have to go do that.
you're Brooke Whipple. We need to do that.
I
Um,
do.
Speaking of some feats, let's talk about you were on the show alone twice. We've had somebody on the show on there. It's quite a trip on how it's different than Naked and Afraid because from what I think Jordan Jonas, he's the one that was on there. He told me it just doesn't end. It just keeps going until you can't go anymore, and you're the last one. Tell us about your experience with this. How from the moment that you said, "Yep, I want to do that," to the highlights of those experiences, those two episodes, those two seasons you did.
We were in the far back country of Alaska the first time I laid eyes on season one. And it was just up on a TV screen in the only bar for hundreds of miles. And even though they had the audio down, I was gripped by what I was seeing on the television. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to like get some Wi-Fi and go watch this. Several months later, I binged the whole first season. I was just like enamored. Like I would love to do that. Like my husband, I told him like you have to see this show. He came and binge watched the whole thing. We both were like, this would be so amazing to do. And then lo and behold, they opened casting for a family season. So if you were they were casting family members to go and do this together. We're like, that's perfect. We'll do it together. And so they're casting husband, wife, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncle. Like you had to be related. So yeah, we got chosen to go, and our strategy was just to go in with the skills we have and not set any expectations of what we might encounter, because that's where you're going to set yourself up for trouble. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that. You're really just about to put your foot in your mouth when you say things like that and be schooled by what actually happens. So we kept a very open mind, and we had an amazing experience. So we lasted 49 days. So
Wow.
7 weeks. 7 weeks is a really long time.
Yeah.
And we just had an amazing experience. About a week before we left, kind of didn't know, you kind of don't know where you're at as far as your red lines, right? Because they're only checking it, like they come randomly to grab your media, they come randomly to check on you. You're not looking in a mirror ever. And so I remember one day they just ripped into the cove and pulled up, and we're like, oh, just random check. Funny aside too, they came in carrying this box like this, and it was like a white box. My husband's like, oh, they brought us a pizza. Of course they didn't. It was a set of scales like in a box. And he said, oh, you're here to weigh us? And they said, no, we're here to weigh her. And they pointed at me. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, it wasn't unusual. We got weighed, but I mean, they made a specific trip to weigh me. And at this point, season 3 had been filmed and was done. and we hadn't seen it, of course. So this was season 4. And they weighed me, and then, they go away and have a little powwow. And you're like, what's going on? Then they come back and they sit down and they're like, listen, you're about to hit a red line. And if you don't change something, we're not going to let you go past your healthy point of where you should be. And we're like, well, what is that? Like, you can't just change they're like, you have to change your strategy. Like, there's no strategy to change. Like, the fish are gone. It's late December. Like, there's no food. We've tried everything. And I said, so have you ever had to take someone out because of, starvation?
Mhm.
And they said, yes. So that was new at that time. I had not seen that happen on that show yet because season 3 hadn't aired yet, but they had pulled people from season 3. So I got to tell you, that moment was the first time like a little bit of doubt was planted up here, right? So like, you're so strong mentally, and then someone just puts that little bit of doubt in your head. And we had no idea how thin I was, really. I mean, you're skinny, but and then so the next week we really tried hard to try to get new things. We caught a buttload of like these really giant, nasty bile tasting snails that we tried to eat, and apparently they're poisonous.
Whoa.
I tried to catch a giant octopus that climbed out of the rocks by me, and I didn't get that. There was no fish, there's no mushrooms, there's no berries, there's no animals. And so I was starting to get pretty ill, nothing was, I couldn't eat seaweed. Like, I was really done for. So we made the hard decision to just pull the plug, because the next time they were going to come, they were going to pull me out.
Right.
So we had to end our stay, and we were so in it to win it, but I just didn't have the body weight on me. Dave could have stayed longer. So it was always kind of a, if one taps, the other one taps. That's how that one went.
Right.
You go together if one has to go. So at the end of the day, we left nothing on the table, and we feel so good about our experience. And it was just a gift. It was an absolute gift.
I heard that the first thing that you need on that show is water and animal fat. Because not just because you're not just, you can't get lean protein. You need the animal fat. That's essential. So that's what I've heard every time somebody is on Naked and Afraid or Alone or whatever. They say that. Now you went back again though, right?
Yeah, so I got invited back for season 5, the very next season. And of course, I couldn't turn it down. I felt bad. I wanted Dave to go. He's the one I thought deserved another chance, but they picked me to go. They probably just needed another female, honestly. So whatever. I was like, okay, I'll go to Mongolia. So that one was super interesting because that was a bunch of returned people, right? People had already been on the show. Everybody had already been through that experience once. And I got to tell you, the difference between season 4 and season 5 was massive. Like, you all spend about a week together leading up to the launch of the show. And season 4, it's like the day of launch, and they're flying helicopters, and there's cameras all over, and they're like, okay, when the green chopper goes over, you're like, rah! You're literally like, so
Yeah.
it's just so fun. It's just a blast, and you're so close to all these people you've just met. It's just fantastic.
Yeah.
Season 5, with all these people who had done it before, same situation. Like, here comes the helicopter, and you're like, rah. Because, like, seriously, what's coming. What a sufferfest this is. It was almost like PTSD among us. It was just like there was tears flowing. There was like the knowledge of like what you're about to do for the second time. And it's heavy. It's a burden almost, and don't feel sorry for me. It's not like I'm asking for sympathy. This is a wonderful gift, but like the heaviness of what you already know you've been through. And for me, it was only 9 months later. So it was very crisp. Let's just say that. And I do think that played on me a bit. And I loved the landscape. I loved being there. It was a very different experience. It was very dry and beautiful.
Hmm.
You know, I'd sit there and watch the sun go down on the mountains every night. And I have this beautiful fire. The firewood was dry all the time. It was complete opposite. And I'd sit here and think to myself, if I had friends and food, this would be a party, you know?
Right.
But I'm alone and I'm starving. And it was still beautiful. But 28 days was enough for me. I just
Wow.
was like, I'm done with being alone and I want to eat food with people. And like this experience was great, but that's where I wanted to end it. So no regrets there either. It was amazing. But I tell you, Mongolia, where we were, you wouldn't get found.
Wow.
On the coast of Vancouver Island, where we were actually on a separate little island, Nanaimo Island off of Vancouver. But you know, you'd see boats. There's people around. Like you could probably get found. Mongolia, no. I'd see a jet once in a while, and you're like, that's going from like China to Russia or something over top of you. It was like you die out there. No one would find you. So that
Mhm.
was a stark difference of just the remoteness. Even though Vancouver Island's remote, there's like waterways, you know, boats.
Right.
So
Vancouver Island
yeah,
has like nice, there's like, I know somebody that lives on Vancouver Island. There's like a nice community there. There's like
yeah, you'd be found probably. Yeah,
right.
you could make a fire and be found.
Wow. So, I mean, 3 days is a long time. If you think about it, just to be with nothing, because you don't have, you can't bring your whole gear or your tents and all that. It's intense. It's crazy. So, how long ago was the last one?
So Mongolia was 2017, I believe. It's been a while now. Yeah, and you know, I'm always thinking to myself, how do I keep my edge? You know, I think about that all the time.
Hmm.
Where's my personal edge? How do I keep moving that edge and keep testing myself, keep doing things I don't know how to do and do things that challenge me and I that's just life. Like that's so exciting to me. So I constantly am evaluating like that was definitely an edge and I know where that's at now. I'm like what's next, you know?
Well, you're also, I saw some content on like, telling people how to survive, like get off grid, you know. Uh, I didn't get tap into too much of the how to the extent of that, but do you have a place like that? And what how what do you talk about when it comes to that?
Living off grid is really a huge subject, huge community. People live off grid and do the homesteading thing.
Yeah.
So we have several properties where we have off grid cabins and develop off grid systems. And we have two in Alaska and a couple, two or three here in Michigan. So we use that as basis to do our work and do things for YouTube, but also like one of those I'm building out to be like a retreat kind of place
Oh,
for women
cool.
to come and learn some of those outdoor skills. Um, and it kind of marries my love of creating like the most magical, beautiful space you can think of. And I know some people would call that glamping, if you've heard that term.
Yeah. I have.
But for me, it's just this aesthetic that melds so great with just the whole feeling of being outside so that you can be comfortable and you can be inspired by just a beautiful surrounding in a beautiful surrounding. So there's that. There's just also the building aspect of building these kind of places. And it's a challenge to see how you can put systems in place that mirror a regular home, right? So water, um, where are you going to go to the bathroom? How are you going to take care of that? How are you going to take care of your electricity needs? Can you have access to the internet or cell phones? You know, and some of that you need to work, and some of that you want to not have at all because you don't want that invading your time and space in those places. You want that quiet.
Right.
Um, and other places, it's just not viable, right? So, like where we live in Alaska and lived, we've lived on permafrost. You
Hmm.
can't have a traditional septic system. You can't even have a traditional outhouse. So you have to think about that. You might live on granite, which is the same thing. You can't drill through granite. Whereas in the UP, I could put a hand well in an hour,
Huh?
pounding with a sledgehammer and put a pump on it and have water. I mean, it's like it
That's
really
in
is
Michigan.
that.
That's in Michigan.
That's in Michigan. So
Yeah.
that's that variable between just land and what you have access to.
Right.
And so there's so many things to explore with an off-grid, setup. It's super fun, and everyone has their own take on things, and it's just, I am addicted. I'm addicted to building and developing those kind of spaces, whether they're more of a camp kind of setup or an off-grid like cabin or living setup. It's just super interesting to me.
It's interesting to me too. I love the simplicity. It's not like, so much even like, when you're younger, like, I don't, you got a financial thing. It's not a financial thing. It's so much of the simplicity of like, you know, taking all your daily tasks, and simplifying your life, to where just writing bills and just dealing with, transactions and all that, to where homesteading is this very attractive, to where you're like, no, I mean, there is no electric bill, there is no water bill. There is, I didn't have to go through regulation to do this because, for the build out and all this. And it's just something's very appealing about the simplicity of all that.
Yeah, there's also something to be said too, that pull and that feeling of doing things yourself.
Mm.
It's so rewarding. It builds upon itself. And I think the more you do for yourself, the more you want to do for yourself. And in those kind of, building trades or figuring out electricity or plumbing or whatever, like it's just so empowering. It transfers to every other part of your life.
Yeah, I get that too. Yeah, you just be able to, I go back to regulation because I'm from Los Angeles. Now I'm in Georgetown, Texas. But like, in order to do a build out, build anything in LA, it's like the more red tape than anywhere in the United States. I'm telling you right now, more than probably in New York City. It's crazy. And the freedom just to, now that I have Georgetown, Texas, and what you're talking about to the nth degree, is awesome. And once you build your own thing, because you didn't have to go through, sometimes you get discouraged. Like, yeah, you got to get this permit, you got to do that, and you got to do that now. You just build it, and it's like, it's so gratifying. And I get that. Where are you at today, right now? What's going on with you topically, in your career and your life?
Yeah, I'm still exploring my edges as a builder. So last year I cut and peeled a cabin's worth of logs on my property in Alaska. And so they're drying right now. And I hope to build
God,
my own log cabin by myself.
wow.
So I don't know if you're familiar with Dick Prenneke. He is a pioneer in the space. Back in the 60s, he homesteaded some land on Twin Lakes in this like kind of southern Alaska, right? He filmed himself on a Bolex film camera,
Yeah.
and there is documentaries out there called One Man's Wilderness, and they are so inspiring. Um, he has inspired just millions, probably, of people because he's just films himself doing his cabin back in the 60s.
Yeah.
And it's just beautifully done. I mean, and this guy is such a craftsman. I mean, he made his own hinges out of wood. Like he used all hand tools to build this log cabin. And he was 52 years old when he did it. I'm 52 years old. And so that's kind of, I'm, this is my Dick Prenneke moment. I'm gonna
Wow.
try to do that. So
How long did
we
it take
had a
Dick to build his he's 52. How long did it take him to build his cabinet? Did he go to the end of that?
Yeah, he cut his logs the year before, like
Uh-huh.
I did, and then built. I believe he had his walls up, and in like a span of maybe a month
Wow.
and a half, he was in it. I mean, and it's stunning, the work, the craftsmanship. Like it's still now it's part of the National Park Service. You can actually go visit his cabin as it was. Visit it's Lake Clark National Park in Alaska. And you got to fly in. It's very remote, and you can go see Dick's cabin still. It was
Wow.
deeded to the national park, and so it's just super inspiring. And I just think there's no there shouldn't be a timeline on your age of what you can do. There shouldn't be a timeline on your your anything. Like if you want to go for something, And I'm just kind of, I feel wired to be that person, just to prove that anything is possible.
Right.
So yeah, that's my next biggest thing. So that's what I'll be working on this summer.
How long will it take you to build that cabin?
I'm not going to put a time on it.
Yes.
I
Very
was
zen.
recent.
Yeah, it's zen like. Yes.
I'm a person who, I'm like a rabid fox when I get on a kill, right? Like I can't stop working. I can't sleep. I just have to go for it. But I was recently reading this old book about building your cabin, right? It's an old book written probably in the 50s. And it had some advice I think I really want to take. And it was like, take your time. If it's a beautiful day, take the
Mm.
afternoon off and enjoy the process. And don't hurry at it, but enjoy every single moment of that build. And if it takes 2 months, if it takes 6 months, if it takes a year, like enjoy the process. And that is a new headspace for me because I'm like, gotta get it done. I said I'd get it done. I can even feel the change in how I speak. Like when I think about doing it that way, as opposed to like the way I'm normally just like a squirrel. So I'm gonna try to really just enjoy the process. And if I don't get it done this summer, I'm not gonna stress about it and I'll finish it next summer. But I will try to get it done. But I'm gonna try to be mindful of that, just to really like enjoy it.
Such is life, such is applicable to anything in life, and that is to enjoy the process and enjoy what you're doing. And you are enjoying what you're doing. Uh, Tell everybody how they can find out more about you.
Probably the best way is YouTube. I'm Girl in the Woods on YouTube, Girl in the Woods with a Z on Instagram. So that's a fun place. I post a lot of stuff there too. But yep, that's about it.
Yeah, no, I followed you there, and yeah, it's a with a Z. Girl in the Woods with a Z. Check it out. A lot of great content. Uh, Nice musical choice on one of the last videos you did. A lot of people, lately, you'll hear like all these like fast-paced trending songs, and you had like it was a nice little touch. It was like it added a nice little ambiance. It's very tastefully done. Go check it out. Girl in the Woods. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. Gear up for your next adventure and head over to BOLOTOR.com to check out the amazing Bolo Pack and their other innovative outdoor gear. Catch you next time.